All right, Monday morning. We don't have a guest today. I'm not feeling quite as randy in terms of wanting to complain about things. So that's a nice start to the morning. But I do want to take a moment to give a shout out to one of our community members who went out of their way because they want to go to a dualistic unity retreat so badly because the community means so much to them. And honestly, we've talked to this person frequently. They're fantastic. They always add insight and depth to everything we discuss, but they can't necessarily get the funds together to get to the Netherlands on their own. And so they created a GoFundMe page. And we're asking that the community, if you can, give them a hand, 5, 10, 20 bucks, doesn't have to be much, or even just spread the link around. The person I'm talking about, of course, is AJ. You can find the link to his GoFundMe on our website under events in the navigation bar. If you're on our Discord, you can find the link there in Patreon. No, not Patreon stuff, sorry. In retreat plans, you'll find the link to AJ's GoFundMe there. A number of community members have already helped him, and we are very, very grateful for that. So if you can give AJ a hand, I'm sure he would be very appreciative.
Yeah, I'm really hoping we can get AJ there. Love chatting with him on the Patreon calls, and he's big time Dualistic Unity supporter. So yeah, I mean, it's gonna be funny because that what is it now? It's like 8 months till that retreat, and we're already that if 34.9, it's like 28% of the tickets are already sold, and they've been public for like a week. So yeah, if you're interested, do not wait. Hop on that. If you're not, but you still want to support, you got AJ, toss him a couple dollars to help him get there. And yeah, just, I don't know. I'm pumped for it and excited to chat today. And I'm pretty high right now too. So I'm like relaxing into it. But anyway, yesterday's chat with Scott was a lot of fun. We were got pretty aggressive with things, but we caveated everything, I think, during it, which was awesome. So but yeah, it doesn't mean that our message wasn't well thought out and well intentioned. And yeah, because as much as sometimes things feel like we're being aggressive about something, sometimes that's what it needs. You need a little bit of aggression, a little bit of oomph behind it to really get the message across. So yeah, I'm sure a lot of people are going to enjoy that episode a lot and appreciate it.
Some may not.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's okay. And specifically, I say that's okay because that's life. Like, you're going to have to take stuff from time to time. And I think it's so important that one recognizes that their idea of someone or their expectations of someone or their perception of someone is never the complete truth. It's never the whole picture. Like, we always have this, and we talk about this frequently, this picture of someone who is in a state of perfect enlightenment, and we never imagine them like bashing their toe and going, fuck. Like, we never picture that in our head. We see them bashing their toe and like breathing calmly. Like, it's so inhuman. And so it's really important to recognize that everybody has a day where they're feeling a little fiery. Everyone, right? And that's okay to embrace that, feel it, process it, do that whole thing. So I did want to cover one more thing very quickly, because I've been talking to a lot of our new community members, and there are a lot of new community members. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to say I'm so glad that you're here. But I've noticed that a lot of the questions that I've been getting from these new community members are questions that we actually had addressed early on in the podcast. And it's because everybody's jumping on board to episode 1, season 1. And that's great, because admittedly, season 1 is a deep dive. It is a psychedelic trip from start to finish. It's the deepest shit that I could throw into Andrew's view when I met him, where he was at the time. And he took it like a fucking champ. But by season 2, he wasn't fucking around anymore. Now Andrew was in the shit. Now Andrew was fully aware of what the fuck we were talking about for the most part, and he was exploring it. And so, in my opinion, season 2 is a lot of fun, but it also gets really, really deep into a lot of the things that we talk about frequently here on Raw. But more so, because we really did take our time to unpack it. Season 2 is 21 episodes. It's a long season, and it's because we go into a lot of serious topics. My favorite being the big one, where we're literally talking about how society might fall. The dream, lucid living is a fantastic episode if you want to trip the fuck out. Cycles within cycles. We started the roundtables in season 2, so our initial 4 roundtables are in that season, and they very much set the pace for what is now our group discussions, our roundtables with our Patreon supporters. There's so many good, juicy insights in season 2. I do recommend that you go back and you check it out. And of course, if you are a fan of the non-dual radical philosophy message, I do encourage you to check out episode 9, Beyond Words, where we spoke to somebody who is a card-carrying member of that philosophy.
That's a good way to put it. But yeah, definitely, it's interesting because people see podcasts and they're like, they want to go back usually, and I do the same thing. Like if I come across a new one, it's like you go to the first episode, maybe listen to the second, and you're like, all right, I got a feel for what they're talking about, and then you jump because you want to be, caught up and go to the existing ones. And that is not how Dualistic Unity is structured at all. It is very much a journey, as we did our best to express in our new little trailer we put out there, just to give some context to everything that we're talking about. Because if you start with season 1, it's like that's a month after Ray and I met. We had just started talking about it. I was like fresh and wide-eyed and bushy-tailed into getting into this conversation, and obviously that conversation has shifted a lot over the seasons. But it's not something you can just skip around. Like as much as we don't structure the episodes, we don't talk about what we're going to talk about, whether it's a live stream or an existing episodes. Something I think is funny too is before we have guests, and even like we've had some pretty famous people on the podcast, and we don't meet before the guests. Like I know that other podcasts that have 2 hosts definitely like think about all the questions they ask. They come up with questions together. Like Ray and I don't speak at all before those episodes, which I find hilarious. But that's how we've done every episode. We've never met before to be like, all right, let's strategize this one a little bit. It's like, let's hop on. Maybe Ray has something to say. Maybe I have something to say. We don't know what each other has to say. A lot of times both of us come to it and we're like, I have no idea what we're going to talk about today, but we're going to talk about stuff. And so as much as that is the case, the seasons and the episodes within the seasons do have a flow to them because it is organic, because it isn't some curated thing where we plan beforehand and think like, okay, this is a topic we should cover. It's just what comes out of reality, what was being expressed through reality in each of those weeks and time periods. And so throughout it, as much as Ray has grown throughout the podcast, like I have definitely made a lot of shifts and changes and deepened my understanding of everything that we talk about. And it's very much a progression throughout the season. Season 1 had a ton of questions, just nothing but questions, starting to get it. But there was a lot of like, I don't really know what you're talking about right there. And continuing on with the conversation like that. Season 2, as Ray said, like I started to get a feel for it. There were still questions. There were still things that I definitely didn't get super well, but I was willing to explore it because I was exploring it in my own life. I was able to come to the podcast and be like, all right, so this one makes a lot more sense now because, whether it's something I sat on, pondered for a bit, or I had a big mushroom trip and I was like, like I said once, Ray makes so much more sense when I'm tripping my balls off. And so season 2 is a lot of that, exploration into some of the stuff we discussed in season 1, but I'm starting to digest it a little bit more. And then season 3, season 4, there's lots more shifts there too. But yeah, just to reiterate, Dualistic Unity is not like a typical podcast where it's like, there's a topic here and there. There are in the community topics. That's part of the reason that we covered those. And there's like close to 60 topics that we've covered through those now. So if you have specific ones, you can search like Dualistic Unity blah blah blah, or on YouTube we have a specific playlist that shows all the community topics. So there's a lot of specific stuff covered there, but besides that, if you're intrigued by episode 1, 2, 3 and everything we discussed there, we just get deeper and deeper into those recognitions, explore them in different ways, talk about them in different ways throughout, especially season 2. Getting into season 3, we had more guests, so there was like a different kind of exploration there. But yeah, season 2 I think is very, very important if you're enjoying the process of it, because it is a consistently unraveling journey throughout our experience and discussions we cover. So it's not one you want to just bounce around and click on. There's definitely a flow to each season and each episode.
Oh, for sure. And I don't know if everybody is aware of this because we got so lost in doing community topics episodes. We actually have 2 Q&A episodes. They exist. They were at the end of season 1 and in season 2, where we field, I think it's like 15 to 20 questions in each of those episodes. They're 2.5 hours long. Just one question after another. They were a lot of fun. They were actually what inspired the community topics episodes, because we started to realize that there were so many questions that we couldn't just wait, let them pile up. We thought it'd be more fun to just do them week by week. And so that's where community topics came from. But I'll admit, it's funny because I have a history of programming. I learned how to program when I was very young. I took to it like a fish to water. Something about the way that my brain works is just great and happy when it comes to complex problems that I break down into small functional parts over a large programming block, basically, or a large function itself. Like, I enjoy problem solving, and I can always see how things kind of step into stages. You remember learning flowcharts in school?
Yeah.
Did you ever like them?
Yeah, wait, which ones are those
So
again? Is that
flowcharts
like
are like logical programming flowcharts, where basically you have an arrow and it comes down, and either you have like a triangle or you've got a square, depending on what the function is. Like if it's an if then, it'll go like this way or that way, basically if else, and then so it follows down. And so you got numerous different directions that are all happening in a logical sequential. All of that shit just maps itself out in my head. Like, typically I've always been that kind of person. I used to just, like, I wouldn't draw flowcharts. I would just see them and then I'd just start programming. That was just how it went. And so having this conversation for as long as I've had, I've recognized where I guess the progression works better in a lot of ways, but I never get to have the long conversation I'd like to have. I've never had the long conversation I'd like to have from the state that I was in just before I met you. I thought that was really interesting. And so when we started talking, I'll admit my brain just went, okay, where do we start? Like, what's the foundational shit? And then the next conversation would be like, all right. And I'd be listening to you. Okay, from there, this is the next thing that I can think of. And so all of season 1 is just me throwing everything. But season 2, there's way more involvement. Like, I find the conversations went back and forth way more, and you were throwing shit out of left field. Like, you were really exploring it. And this is why I want to encourage everyone who is going through that phase, season 2, go and check out season 2. Absolutely. And we'd love your feedback, of course. But there are a lot of big questions that we took on in season 2. A lot. And I think a lot of people are missing that just because they're so excited to get to the newer stuff. And I get that. I do. I'm not saying, don't pay attention to these. Just maybe from time to time, check out season 2. I think you'll enjoy it. I'm done saying that now. I want to talk about something else quickly on a tangent. So I'm 43, and I spent a long time going through some physical stuff, like physical ailments. I had a lot of injuries from the past. I'm not exactly the smartest person when it comes to like doing work and stuff, or at least I wasn't when I was younger. So I would always push hard and of course strain my body and do all that as well as numerous other things. But so what I'm saying is that the physical environment that I inhabit at the moment sucked to a large degree. Wasn't great. I worked with it. I was teaching martial arts. I was doing all that, but there was always aches and pains. And there was stuff that I had just more or less reconciled was just part of my life now. And over the last 3 years, I have slowly, incrementally found the parts of my body that hurt when I move them, and very subtly focused in on moving them, very subtly, a little bit at a time, exercising extreme patience, like to the point of feeling the beginning of the pain, but not pushing past it. Because again, these are all things that I had decided were never going to move again. Like I'm specifically talking about my shoulder, my back, and my hip, right? All twisted to shit. Even my chiropractor friend, he took an x-ray of me, and this was his response. Oh, Ray, what did you do? Like, I'm not even kidding. That was his response. And so I had more or less just decided that that pain was going to be a part of my life. I'm just going to have to favor that side, blah, 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 blah. But that's not the case. I really want to stress this, especially for anybody who's going through some physical disabilities and some physical pain and things like that. It's not to say that there isn't a physical limitation necessarily. Like, again, I'm 43. I'm not 16. Like, I get that. So I have to address my body differently. But with some patience and some attention, you'd be surprised exactly how little the narrative you've told yourself is true, that there is some mobility that's possible, that there is at least a little bit of pain relief that is possible, but it's through going through that pain. Like for me, if I'm stretching out my right side, everything, I feel it right into my eye. Like, and I've lost 85% of the vision in this side of my face or in this eye. And it's because the optic nerve has been crushed. That's very much what happened previously. I've got the pressure down now, but all of that is connected to the fact that my right side is in a constant state of tension, constant, habitually, because of certain injuries over time. And so I find it really interesting that I've always avoided stretching it out because I feel it in my eye. It's like somebody just dragging you from the back of your eyeball. It sucks. It's really not a fun feeling at all. So you stretch slowly, gently, in different ways, in different directions. And most importantly, you stop telling yourself it's not possible. You stop telling yourself you're fucked. That's really it. And so I just wanted to mention this to people who feel hopeless because it hurts. Yeah, it does. It's not that I'm not going through pain still, but the pain has either become more manageable or it's lessened. I'm not sure which it is. By leaning into it a bit more, by not being as afraid of it, by allowing myself to stretch it out and to try and add some fluidity to that tension, to that locked up feeling like it's just beyond moving. Like everybody knows what I'm talking about if they're experiencing this for sure. Just don't give up hope. Have some patience, breathe. Don't try to get anywhere, right? This is the thing. Try and look at it in the long term. Like when I lie down and stretch, I'm not trying to fix my back today, immediately. If anything, if I can make 0.001% today, then tomorrow it'll be 0.002. And 1,000 days from now, it'll be 1, right? And that's kind of the point, is that at least it's something, which is better than nothing. It's better than going in the other direction. But this doesn't apply just to your physicality, does it? This applies to your ego. This applies to all of the things that you're fragile about, that hurt, all your triggers, all that. Don't be afraid to poke around in there a little bit. Okay, you'll gain confidence and strength, and you'll realize that you're not as limited as you think.
Yeah, it's interesting how quickly we settle upon, the self-given limitations, like rather than remaining uncertain about what's going to happen to it, where it's going to go. We just settle like, oh, yes, this is it, going to be forever. And it's because we want that certainty, even though it's, despite being so limiting, we would rather settle upon that. And so if you can remain open to the potentials, the possibilities, and I think very much keeping that long-term perspective is key for everything, like everything you do. That's something that has helped me a lot with content too. Like I love making content, but like any content creator will say, sometimes you get caught up in the numbers or whatever, and it happens from time to time. And the thing that helps me the most if I do get caught up in that is taking a step back, realizing this is what I love to do. So there isn't any need to try and get it to a place, because if I just keep doing it in the way that I'm doing it now, stay enthusiastic about it, which is a lot more difficult when you're focusing on things, outside of your influence, being numbers and followers or whatever it may be, and just relax into the recognition that if this is what I love doing, I'm chilling doing this for the next 10 years. And if I can be doing it for the next 10 years, inevitably there's going to be all different sorts of changes that I have no idea what's going to happen. And it's a lot more, it's a lot easier to settle into that sort of patience when you enjoy what you're doing, like when you're doing it for the sake of doing it, as opposed to doing it for some ulterior motive. And I guess that goes for the physical nature of it too, like doing it to get to a place in which you don't feel it as much is going to kind of create this impatience and desire to be in a spot. And because you're not going to be as focused in on the feelings that you have, like you're not going to be honed in on the body part as much. You're not going to be as attentive to it because, again, that attention is split. You know, the Archer story, attention's split. Half your attention's on the prize of not feeling this anymore. If you can just focus on the feeling, on the thing that you're doing, if it's content, focus on the video that you're making or the tweet that you're tweeting or the podcast that you're filming or whatever it may be, it's going to be way easier to get to that place that you want to get to. But it's going to be a lot harder to do so when half your attention is focused on that, because that means half your attention, only half of your attention is on the thing that you're doing, which is the thing that gets you to that place. Focusing on the place isn't ever what gets you to the place. If anything, it takes you further from it because you're not able to give as much attention to the thing that you're doing. But we don't think about that very often. Like we really don't think about the fact that we have, you know, if our attention is a pie chart or something, we have 100% attention. And if we're focused on things that aren't what the thing is that is going to get us to that place that we want to get, if we're focused on the place we want to get, that takes a piece of that pie out. And then you have a limited amount of attention, energy you can give to the thing that's actually going to get you there. So people talk about goals and whatnot and how they're necessary, but it's like, yeah, to give you that direction. But if it's more than that, it's like giving it that direction takes out a little tiny sliver of that pie. Focusing on it and thinking that that's someplace, and every day waking up in the morning and be like, these are all my goals. This is how I need to get there. That's taking a bigger chunk out of that pie. It's not necessary. It's going to slow down your progress. Doesn't mean you're going to stop making progress, but it's going to be a hindrance to a degree because you're not able to spend as much attention and energy on that thing, no matter what the thing is. Doesn't matter. The more you can focus on it, the quicker you're going to get to where you're going to get. May not be where you want to get, but it's going to be the best place to be when you get there.
My God, that's the actual kicker, though, isn't it? When it comes to, especially when we're talking about like the deeper insights, when we start talking about, you know, the I am part of everything insights, not the concepts. That's not what I mean. I mean those genuine moments where you can't help it, like almost shit your pants because it seems so fucking obvious. You're just like, what? How have I missed this? And it's always a result of having that excess energy, of having that excess attention there, of just not thinking about your shit, not thinking about yourself, not thinking about your narrative. It's always in a moment where you're relaxed. That is so difficult to understand. It's frustrating. It's annoying. Like there's a lot of different feelings you have about that entire mechanism over time, for sure. Like, what? I have to stop trying? It's like, correct. Because what you're doing when you're trying is resisting. Relax. It's like, okay, I'm going to try and relax. That is not what I said. It's that difficult, right? Because we don't understand, but it's kind of like when I was in salesmanship and we were doing all these workshops and stuff. Anyway, this guy comes in and he drops a pen on the floor and he's like, you know, I want you to try and pick up this pen. So of course, guy bends down to pick it up. He's like, that's not what I said. I said, I want you to try and pick up that pen. The guy picks it up. He's like, you're not trying. You picked it up. That was the lesson. There is no try. Do it or don't. Right? You're either doing it or you're not. You know, so that's kind of dualistic unity in a nutshell. Right? Like either we are sitting here doing it or we are planning it and then we're not doing it. The tone of dualistic unity changes when it starts to become something that needs to be something later instead of just this conversation now, right? But the same is true for their insights moment to moment. It's not until where you are is enough that you can see more of where you are.
Boom. And that's that clarity that's on the other side of the letting go of the resistance to where you're at. Like we always are in a situation where like, I don't want to be here. And so like that desire to not be where you're at is the veil that's blocking you from recognizing all of the options that you do have in order to get out of that situation. But you have to let go of your desire to get out of it. And it's so counterintuitive all the time. But yeah, like if there's anything that Dualistic Unity has been, it's just the continued process of doing it. Like, and that's it. Like we out of all of the time that we have spent on Dualistic Unity, cumulative time, the doing versus planning is like, I don't know, planning's maybe 0.00001% when you put together all of our episodes, live streams, time we've talked, meetings we've had, like videos we've made, all of it. Like it's the most minuscule amount of planning because we're just doing it and the process is unfolding as we go. We're finding out more as we go. Like we're doing it live all the time. The entire time, Dualistic Unity has just been doing it live. And as certain things come up, like everything we've added also hasn't been, very few have been from meetings and like planning sessions. They've all just been like, I have a thought. Why don't we do this? Should we start a Discord? Should we start a Patreon? Hey, people are requesting a lot of stuff. Should we do a community topics dealio? And it's just like on the fly. It's like, yeah, we could do that. Should we do a workshop on this? Yeah, we can do that. And it's just like as we go, it's like a quick conversation. Yeah, why not? Should we do a retreat? It's like, yeah, sounds like a good thing to do in a couple of years. Like, how about 6 months? Like that too sounds good. All right. And then we just keep going. We figure it out. The process is happening as we go because we are that process. And it's us changing as much as Dualistic Unity is changing, and that perspective shifts as we go. And we don't know what this is going to look like in 3 months or 3 years, but it's going to look like something. And our willingness to be attentive to where we're at, to let go of the need to plan. And that's, I don't know, a lot of times if you do start doing too much, it's just rooted in fear, and then you're embodying fear. And then that takes you further from the flow that you could be in if you weren't so afraid. So we don't know. And that's one of the most exciting things that I could imagine, is not knowing where you're going to be tomorrow or in 5 years.
Admittedly, working with you, I really enjoy being the age that I'm at. Like, I love the fact that it took me as long as it has to get to where I am to eventually meet you and have this conversation, because as a result of all that, I've gone through a lot of different phases in my life. I've set a lot of fires, that kind of thing. And so I see you and your enthusiasm, and I'm like, yeah, but remember, people, and you do the same for me, and I appreciate that. But it's like, I just like, sometimes I'm like, heads up, you're challenging something that people don't want challenged. I remember saying that to you a few times and drawing out a couple of points where it's just like, this isn't going to go as well as you think. It's just because people are fragile. And it's just, we've gone through that. But now Amanda has come on board as well. And she has ideas just flying out of her awareness, because of course she sees this the same way that we do, that anything is possible if we just have enough attention, if this means enough to us, if we have the clarity and the awareness and the empathy and all that stuff. But she's just like if we had enough resources to just empower Amanda, the world would change in a week, right? But we were having a discussion, her and I, about, well, which direction is Dualistic Unity going to go in? Because there's so many different things that one day we could do that have a small impact, that create a ripple, that change things in some way or another. And I was saying to her that at this point in my life, I've really come to the point where I've recognized I don't know as an individual, and I'm not supposed to know as an individual. This is the process of us finding out. As each of us come into the community, each of us with different skills, different insights, different ideas come into the community, and we're able to see the people who want to invest the most in themselves and thus into the community, and we're able to empower them and give them resources, and they come up with ideas that empower other community members. It's all going to come together in the fact that the ideas will come to us at the right time through you, through all of you, through your journeys. When you inevitably come into the community, or we meet you face to face, or we do connect with you because you've reached out and you said, hey, I have a great idea, or better yet, I have time and I would love to help. When we see that, we take notice. There's a reason you feel so passionate about this, and we know. And so we are noticing. But to me, that process unfolding is how this all changed. I don't know. I love the simple insight that I don't know how to create the world that we all see is possible. Because if I did know, that wouldn't be it. That's the best part about it. It takes all the stress away, doesn't it? You don't need to know how to save the world. You just need to be the world. It'll save itself as it wakes up, and the intelligence to do so becomes manifest, becomes embodied. But that's the first step. Until we gain clarity, we can't do shit. And that means that is the same individually and in the individual collective.
Yeah, it's a funny recognition when the more clearly you see that, changing the world isn't something that is done by an individual. Like, it couldn't possibly be, because we really can't change each other in the way that we think. Like, we all think, okay, I have this idea. That sounds good. I'm gonna go out and convince everyone of it and figure out how to convince everyone of it. Like, that's just not how it works. People can't be. It's very rare that someone is convinced of something that they think the opposite of. Like, they have to be able to recognize it in themselves. You're not going to go up to someone and be like, "Oh, you believe the opposite of this? Let me convince you why it's not the case." Like, even if they're willing to have the conversation, if they're relying upon their belief to feel better, like, cognitive dissonance is going to come and cut that shit the fuck off. Like, it's not going to get through to them. What you're saying is not what was coming out of your net. What is coming out of your mouth is not going to be what's heard by them. Like, it's just not. So there's no way. It's almost like in a I don't know what movie it is, but when someone starts talking and kind of like in Bruce Almighty, when Evan Baxter, he's doing the talking to him and he's like blah, 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 and that, like, that's what someone hears when they're not willing to hear what you're saying. Like, they're not even hearing the same things exactly. Yeah, like a little baby closing their ears and going like nah, 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 nah. Like, that it doesn't work that way. And so to think that you have an idea of the way the world's going to change is absurd, because it's almost like there isn't even an idea that would change it, because of what I just talked about. Like, people aren't going to hear the same idea you express isn't going to be what they hear, and everyone's relying on different ways of feeling better, and so cognitive dissonance is gonna get in the way. And so you have to relax into the recognition that you don't know, and just be willing to find out through you when you step yourself out of the way and just allow that intelligence to arise. Like, if there were, because humans for the most part are the ones that have the idea of themselves, the idea that they can change the world. Like, my dog's not sitting over here thinking like, I'm gonna change the world right now. She's just being the world. And so if humans were out of the way, like, the world would come back to a balance pretty damn quick. Like, reality would have its way with things. Like, trees would start growing again, forests would be replenished, like, everything would go kind of back to not order, but the natural order of things. And so it's funny that we don't recognize that with humans out of the equations and our fucking crazy ass egos, things would go back to working out. And so we're here sitting, all the jerk offs in the government being like, how are we going to fix all this? I have an idea. It's like, why don't you shut the fuck up and just chill for a sec and watch everything unravel? It's us thinking that we can change it that's getting in the way of things happening, but because our ideas are going to be limited based on our experience, perception of ourselves, the way, how much validation we need from the world. And so we're just going to come up with an idea for the sake of soothing all of those things. It's not actually going to be aligned with that sort of natural order of what's going on, because we don't know what that is. We can't see it. We can't think of it. We can't come up with it because it's happening through us. And so as we get out of the way, as we let go of the idea that we could even possibly know how to change the world, we step out of the way and allow that natural order that would happen without humans being so involved to happen. But the beauty is, if we get out of the way, we're still a part of that. And we have a lot of fucking capabilities. And it may even happen more quickly with us if we're stepping our idea of how it's going to happen out of the way. So the best thing you can do to change the world is get the fuck out of the way and let it change.
Oh my God, it just dawned on me. I've been making the same mistake for years. Ah, shit. Okay. So here's the assumption we keep coming up with. Fuck. We keep thinking that it just takes the right idea. We keep thinking it just takes the right idea to make the world a better place. But there have been lots of fantastic ideas that didn't make the world a better place, because it's not just about the idea. It's about the people that embody the action that the idea is being performed through, right? Like, think about it. The vehicle, the car, the combustion engine. Brilliant idea. Has it made things better? No, it hasn't, largely. Could it have? Absolutely. Absolutely, that invention could have been used with a certain degree of reasonability. It could have been used with caution. It could have been used in a non-capitalistic society where actually it was about the function and the utility as opposed to the status symbol. Like, there's so many things that could have changed about how that idea was used. So it's not about the idea. It's about us. Always about us. The idea is not enough. And we keep thinking or hoping that it is, because it's easier, frankly. I just have the right idea, everything's going to be okay. No, it's not that easy. You have to be the point, right? It's not about coming up with a perfect government if you are still egotistical, if you're still divided. It's going to get corrupted. Again, there's nothing that we can do if we ourselves are actually embodying the distortion. Because we'll tell ourselves we're not. Remember that. We will tell ourselves with conviction that we're not doing anything wrong, right? This is human nature. We come up with all kinds of bullshit lines to justify every fucking thing we do. Everything. Until it happens to us, then it's uncalled for. Oh my God, that's inhumane. Fucking weirdest shit. But that is what we're doing. And when it comes to this system, we are so committed to the mentality that we're in, we don't even recognize it came from somewhere. We're so lost in egotism, we don't even recognize the developmental process that brought us to it. We just assume that's the way things are. We literally assume this is the best humanity could do. How fucked is that? But that's us justifying. That is us telling ourselves a story. That's us resisting change. And don't we do that all the time individually?
Because if this is the best we can do, why would we ever try and change anything? Why would we even consider allowing things to change? But I like that analogy you brought up with the idea, because like the idea is the tool. You still have a user of that tool. The idea is the car or the product that you're using, the chainsaw or whatever. Great idea. You can fuck some shit up with a chainsaw, but you can also, make some cool stuff that you can utilize. But yeah, because that's it. Because you have an awesome car that works super well or goes super fast or whatever. And if the driver in it is a fucking jackass, it's going to do a ton of harm with that. And that's anything. Like, there's been lots of great ideas that are used by fucked up people, and they do a bunch of fucked up shit with it. Like, it's not the idea. It isn't even the idea at all that matters. holy shit, like the idea doesn't matter even a little bit because it can be utilized in any with which way, and it's always going to be based on the user. And so that had like we have to change. There is no idea that does it. Oh man. But we keep thinking that it is because, you know, if we come up with the idea, it's kind of like the collaboration, you know. It's great if it's your idea, but if it's someone else's, it's like, nah, I want it to be my idea. So everyone's trying to come up with the best idea just so they can feel better about themselves. They don't give a fuck about anything actually working out. And so you actually have to come to the recognition that there are no ideas. And then we stop trying to come up with ideas and, you know, change ourselves, let go of shit ourselves. And that's the change. Counterintuitive, like fucking everything, basically.
And isn't that dualistic unity? Like that is exactly what drives dualistic unity. It's so funny. Like Andrew and I have been joking about this because Amanda, who is now our administrative coordinator, has the only title in our company. We have no title. We haven't actually considered what our title should be because we don't even know what the hell this is. And we don't want to. From the start, it was, you want to start a podcast? Here, that's a thing. I'm not even kidding. Like my wife was just like, you know, podcasts are apparently kind of a thing. You ever checked it out? And so here we are. Okay, we didn't know what this was going to be. There was no point to the podcast other than the conversation because we're having it anyway. Right. But that's what's bringing people together. And that's what's yielding more community and yielding more empathy and bringing about more in terms of insight, which is bringing about more ideas, but not just ideas, the wherewithal to look at them, filter them, let go of the need that might drive your attachment to them. So you can clinically look at them for their virtue, their benefit, their cost, all of it with awareness, rather than just like, oh, it's an idea, it makes me important, I'm going to follow that. And that's it. Like we are working on ourselves. There is no other point. There is no other point. And because of that, this will become something. What it is, I hope we never have to label. Like even right now, we are going through just a hell of a headache trying to figure out what kind of company are we? So we actually have this weird like corporate structuring fucking shitstorm that we're going through because it's so counterintuitive to the way we think the rest of the time. Like we are very much trying to put on the public face for society while we do something that they don't understand. And that's a lot of fun. Admittedly, it's a lot of fun because it's so fucking laughable, because it's so absurd. As we start to see the organic benefit of just being ourselves, of doing this for the sake of it, without trying to be anything or go anywhere or change anything or anything else, as we start to see all that blossom and grow, it's so fucking obviously absurd how the world currently works and all the stress and distortion that goes with it. They have no joy. They have no joy that's not some temporary high of egotism. And it's so sad because the opposite is so obvious. And yet it requires you to let go of yourself. What's that? You want to be happy. You want to feel fulfilled. You want to be aware. You want to have a good time talking to people. You don't want to be socially anxious, blah, 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 blah. Stop thinking about yourself. Immediately, the ego's like, I don't like that. And your willingness to face that and go through it anyway is really what makes the difference.
Settling into that uncertainty, becoming more okay with it. But it's funny. It kind of reminds me trying to think of all the corporate structuring very much like when we were at the retreat in that the second forest we explored and we were going to do the live stream and no one's looking at their phone. No one's paying attention to the time. And then it dawns on me like, ooh, we had a limited amount of time to do this, right? We had to get back for the live stream. It was such a foreign thing to like have to go back to a schedule. And I think I did have my phone with me and I checked it and I was like, oh damn, we're gonna be late for this. And so we were like, all right, let's make our way back. And there was no rush still. It was just like, yeah, we'll get there when we get there. Ended up, you know, we've talked about that experience of at the retreat trying to do the live stream and how it just like reality wasn't letting it happen. But and that was interesting in itself. But it very much reminds me of that because it's like we're existing in in eternity, just being ourselves, expressing things that are coming up and talking about it. And so, like, what do you even say about, like, how do you even conceptualize that into something that's like corporate speak? And even this morning we were figuring out a new LinkedIn page, and I was like, fucking hey, like, how do we even, I don't know, there's no like podcast option, but it's not just a podcast because it's a whole community. It's like it's in media, I don't know, it's something like that. And it's like we came up with media broadcast initiative or something along those lines. And but it is very funny, and with trying to explain it to people too. Like I use a different way of explaining it every time someone asks me what it is. And even for my content too. And I actually settled upon yesterday, the one I used when someone asked me was my content is just, I'm just sharing things that have helped me to feel more free. That's pretty much it. That has been consistent from the day I started making TikToks till now. And sometimes it's an insight, sometimes it's an expression of that freedom. It's not necessarily direct, advice or anything, but just a video expressing that state of freedom that I'm in. And so that is, as much as there has been a lot of ups and downs, there's been a lot more depth to the recognitions. It's still just sharing things that have helped me to feel more free and putting them out there. Maybe they'll help someone else. If not, cool. If so, cool. And that's really been it. And that's the conversation, is just going back and forth, discussing ourselves, discussing reality, discussing our experiences. And now it's just obviously expanding into just a larger conversation, basically. But you can't put in a business plan, what are you guys? Oh, we're a growing conversation. It's like, what the fuck does that mean? It's like, that's kind of it. But I hear you. I know why you want us to make it into something that's a little more, I don't know, you can derive a little bit more profit from it or something. But yeah, it's just allowing it to happen, not really knowing how or where it's going. But as I said before, to me, that's one of the most exciting things, is not knowing where it's going, trying to put in place like this place that we're getting to, and needing to get there by a certain point. It's like, that's not necessary. So we're not going to do that.
Exactly. That's really all it is. And it's so, again, it's really interesting because it's organic, and it really does come together, and it's so counterintuitive to what the ego thinks. The ego's like, no, if I'm going to get what I want, I gotta force that shit. And we're like, are you sure you know what you want? Are you sure you want that? Like, and we're just always getting in its way. Like, that's all we're really doing. It's not that it's kind of like people saying like, oh, okay, so I got to stop telling myself negative things and I got to start telling myself positive things. No, you just got to stop telling yourself negative things. The other side isn't necessarily true, right? Like, just stop telling yourself things, or at the very least, stop believing them. That doesn't mean start telling yourself things that sound nice that you want to believe, because you're just digging yourself another hole, right? So the same is kind of true with dualistic unity. We go through this frequently, in terms of like, oh, what do we want to do? And we'll kind of have like a moment of cognitive dissonance as we start to think in terms of business. And then we just go back to shooting the shit. Like, it's the funniest thing to watch. And out of shooting the shit was all of a sudden we'll be like, it'd be fun to write a book. And so now we're writing a book. And we are. So everybody knows, we actually read the introductions to our book to our tier 3 supporters on Sunday. That video will be released on Patreon next week-ish. But we've come up with the title for the book. We've written the intros for the book. We're currently planning all the chapters out. Why? Seems appropriate. I've been hesitant to write a book forever for obvious reasons, the Bible. And so here we are thinking, well, this could do damage, but it'd be a lot of fun to see if we could write a book that doesn't, where each and every step of the book, it's warning you about the book itself. That'd be great. Like, that'd just be awesome. So we figured, fuck it, we're going to do that, because that'd be challenging. It'd be a lot of fun. We don't know how long it's going to take. We don't know where it's going to go. We don't know how it's going to be well received. Judging by the title, it's probably going to piss a lot of people off. Can't tell you what the title is unless you're on Patreon. But none of that fucking matters. We just feel like doing it. We just feel like doing it. And we want to make it possible for our community members who have that same inspiration to be able to do that. Like, we would love to be able to have the resources to say, take one of our incredibly talented artists in the community and commission a painting from them for something related to dualistic unity, and then to donate that painting to a charity, or to donate that painting to a gallery somewhere, or just do something with it, right? Like, that'd be great. We would love to be able to empower more of the community, but at the moment, that means resources. And what's so difficult about this, and I'm not going to lie, and admittedly, it's a little easier for me because I've both been poor and been an entrepreneur, is that we work so very hard at this for the sake of it. And at every point along the way, we continuously push out the idea of how much we're making. We continuously push out the stress of not being able to make enough, because we have this conviction, if it's the right time, if this is meant to be received, if this is going to land, if society or we or I am ready for this, it's going to work out. Just put the time in, shut the fuck up. Right? And so that's the conviction we work under. It really is, because I mean, right now, we talked about this a couple episodes ago when that person sent me an email. Right now, we are very much relying on the gratitude of our community. And we appreciate all of your support. We really do. But that is not the end of this game by any means. We are still climbing in terms of traffic. See, to us, there is a point where this rolls over in a rather dramatic way. And it's because this podcast is not like any other podcast. As we were mentioning earlier in this episode, the podcast is an ongoing conversation that stacks upon itself. So for anybody who's truly interested in the ins and outs of this, you start at episode 1, and by the end of season 2, you've pretty much got everything we've got to give, as much as we can at that point. But there's a lot of episodes there. And then season 3, you see the community build, you get to know everybody else, you start to see the other influencers that we communicate with, that we would encourage you to check out. Like, there's so much. And so because that is a long journey, each and every person who comes into the podcast is an adventurer to us. They're a fucking warrior. Like, we know they're going through the meat grinder of all that stuff to be where they are. And we really appreciate that. But you see, most podcasts, they focus on how many people can I get for each and every episode, right? Because a new episode with the new guests is a new chance to get more audience members. Whereas we have new episodes all the time and encourage people to go back to the beginning. So that changes how we work as a podcast. It also changes our monetization options, frankly, because right now, everybody's going through the work. So the newest episodes don't have huge amounts of traffic because everybody's going back to the older episodes, right? But advertisers look at your newest episodes and how much traffic are you getting in that first 7 days, right? And so because we're focusing on the slow build of our community, we are not yet able to attract the advertisers that are willing to pay us more for those ad spots. But when we are, and I want you to understand, like, the podcasts that get more advertisers typically get about 1 million plays a month, 500,000 to 1 million plays a month. At that point, you get interest in terms of advertisers. At that point, Dualistic Unity not only is able to cover us so we can eat and have a roof over our head, but it actually starts getting resources that we can put back into the community. Last month, we hit 75,000 plays in a single month. This month, we are on track to hit 120, possibly 150,000 plays by the end of the month. By end of May, end of June, I fully expect us to be somewhere around 350,000 to 500,000 plays in a month. The change is coming. The resources are coming. It's just time. And at the moment, our low point is what our high point was 2 weeks ago. So we are climbing at a precipitous rate. Like, it is incredible how fast this community is starting to grow. And I'm just telling you all of this because, again, it's just around the corner. This is working. And it's because of you. And we are aware of it. And we believe in it. Well, I wouldn't say we believe in it, but we feel it. We have conviction. We're here for it. And that is largely because of you. So thank you for everything that you are doing to encourage us, to inspire us, to grow yourself, to keep this conversation going, to offer whatever it is you can to it. It changes everything. You may not realize it yourself, but I do. You can take that for whatever you want.
Yeah, it's not even that we believe in it, but we are it as we go, as are you. You are Dualistic Unity. I just want to toss this in there because we literally never say this, but leaving a review or a anything on a platform does help a ton. That's how the process, as much as we are able to, from our existing social media accounts, push people to the podcast, there is, I don't know how the fuck it works, but there is some sort of podcast algorithm. And the more reviews, you can leave like a star review on Spotify. But on Apple, you can leave an actual review, just a couple thoughts on, your thoughts about the podcast, how you're enjoying it, and you can leave a star review. I don't think we've ever mentioned that. A lot of people probably don't know. If you listen on one of those, it may not seem like it does much, but it does actually. So it means a ton if you're able to. No expectation whatsoever, just letting people know that that is a thing that is possible, and it does help us a ton. And I don't think we've ever said that in like 160 episodes, mentioned anything like that. Like every podcast I listen to, if it's on YouTube or something, it starts out with like, comment on this, share it with a friend, subscribe, leave a review, and then it ends it with the same sort of spiel. So they're constantly letting people know as they listen. And we just like, that's not our focus, like pushing all that stuff. We're here for the conversation. So like we never bring it up. We always just forget, we start talking before the episode starts. We're like, all right, let's start recording. And then we start recording, and then we just continue on and then talk for a couple hours. And it's like, all right, that's probably good for this one. And then that's it. So there's no consideration of like, oh yeah, there's things that, other stuff maybe we should mention here and there. So if I remember, I'm going to try every, maybe once a month or every 2 months, just be like, hey, share it, or, leave a review or whatever, because it does mean a lot. And a lot of people I know just aren't aware of it. So just a heads up that it's a thing. But yeah, the growth has been very cool to see. Like it's fucking exciting. It's crazy because we watch our traffic here and there, and the bottoms, we always like bottom out for the week on Saturday and Sunday. Usually people don't listen to podcasts much over the weekend. And then like Monday hits, and we have just a bunch of episodes from the end of the week that people start listening to. And then it's like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday are usually the peak. But our bottom, as much as all of the growth has been at a certain trajectory, like the bottom trajectory, like the bottoms are now, like, as Ray said, like our peaks are here, bottoms are here. And it kind of was at this for a while, and now it's like this. And so like that peak that we had a couple weeks ago is now like where our bottom is at. So it's like we can feel it happening. We can see the growth. It's super exciting. Again, it's not our focus necessarily, but there is a side of it that's like, all right, we can last on what we've got right now, savings mostly, and some of the stuff from Patreon, which we very much appreciate. But there's a point where that's going to run dry. And if there isn't enough coming in, like we're going to have to cut back, go back to once a week and get another job, basically. So it would be cool to not have to do that. And that's why we very much appreciate the support. But yeah, we feel the growth, and it's going to be, once things start to turn, it's not that the conversation is going to change, but the ability for us to do things with the resources is going to. So it's going to be like, all right, we're halfway to a billboard, and we're getting close. We appreciate blah blah blah, and we're chilling now, so we're able, and then I can go back to traveling and whatnot. And then it's like, I'll have all sorts of crazy stories to talk about probably. And it'll be fun to see that shift. But yeah, we're just going to keep plugging along, keep pushing away, keep having the conversation, because that's how I want to spend my days. Basically, I want to spend my time just talking about this. And it's really cool that there are people who are getting involved as well. I had someone comment on a couple clips I made from episode 1 on on TikTok the other day, and he was like, basically said how he was crying because he has been thinking about these things, has never come across anyone who's talking about it. And he's like, oh my gosh, my mind is blown. I can't believe this is happening right now. I'm crying. And I was like, dude, love to hear that. You are going to really enjoy Dualistic Unity, the podcast, the community, everything involved, because there aren't a whole lot of people having the conversation in the way that we're having it right now. Everyone's settling upon something. And for those who are those warriors that are willing to continue the process of questioning, letting go of everything they cling to for that false sense of certainty, it's the place to be. And we are loving the growth and the community and the conversations, especially on Patreon, that are happening right now, because it's a lot of fun and they inform all of our episodes. Like, we're able to continue the flow of the conversation as we go. You know, we learn things from people on Patreon who are going through stuff in their life, and we're like, that's really interesting. I'm going through something similar, blah, blah, blah. Bring it up on an episode, chat with people. And yeah, so it's a lot of fun, and it's just, I don't know, getting more and more fun, basically.
It just dawned on me. Like, I understand that I'm I'm a difficult business partner. Let's just say that, because I have this ridiculous tendency to want to give shit away. Like, and I know that made me a terrible life coach. Like, I was brutal for that. I was just like, here, let me knock my price down because you can't afford it. Or, here, let me just put some extra time in and blah, 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 because I can. And, oh, I think you're good now. You don't need to keep coming in. What do you mean I don't need to keep coming in? It's like, don't you want to make money? It's like, well, yeah, I do. But, I really want you to do better. So as a business partner, I'm rather difficult to work with, because we talk about like workshop prices, for example. And my point is always, we should make it as affordable as possible. And Andrew always agrees with me, which is crazy, because I've had business partners who have looked at me and went, we got to eat. And they've never been impressed with my altruistic tendencies. And so when it comes to like marketing or pricing or offerings or anything like that, when it comes to profitability, sheer profitability and marketing, that is by far our greatest weakness as a business. And yet I would say our greatest strength as a conversation and a community. That's how counterintuitive this is. That is literally why this is succeeding, but also how it will continue to do so. And it's so difficult for the ego to take. And I think that's part of our own challenge in this, right? Is the facing of that. Because why do people support us on Patreon? What has everybody said in terms of why they support us on Patreon, with the exception of that person who had a bad trip and decided I was the Antichrist last week? Because they don't feel like we're ripping them off. I was speaking to somebody last week, and they're like, I heard about everything that was happening, and we talked, and I had a good cry about the fact that they were just saying, like, never, ever had the impression that you're asking me for anything, ever. You've always made it so we can support you or not. Like, you've always made it so it's an option, you and Andrew both, right? Which is terrible business practice. Like, and I know that from school. I know that from being a business consultant. I know that from being in business. All of this is terrible business practice. And yet it's exactly what we need. We need someone that you feel you can at least resonate with, because you feel that they're being authentic. I'm not asking you to trust me, but I'm very much trying to give you all of the chances possible to recognize what I really am. Same with Andrew. We don't want you to trust us, because that would require you to believe us. And we certainly don't want you to believe us. But at this point, it should become clear we're not fucking around. Like, we're not here putting on a show for you. There's no song and dance. There's no top hat coming out. There's no costume. This is just what the fuck I am. And if nothing else, that's all. And if that's enough, this is going to work. And if it's not enough, then maybe it wasn't meant to. But I think that that's what's going to determine whether or not this works. Because if we were to at any point falter out of fear, sell out, start making this into your typical self-help, life coaching, spirituality bullshit for the sake of making profit, it would all fall apart. Maybe not in the short term, because at first everybody would be like, oh yeah, this is great. We're starting to get resources, blah, blah, blah. I know a few of you would be like, nah, I'm not down. And that's very much the point, is that over time, it would eventually just degrade. It would eventually just fall apart into everything we're trying to work to make sure it's not. And so this is an act of faith on our part, on your part. Let's see if it works. That's pretty much it, right? But telling you, once we hit that rollover point, there's going to be a lot of shit that we're going to get into. There's a lot of things that I have planned. I not even planned, but in my head. And you need to understand that I think in terms of resources. It's not just about like, oh, let's spread the wealth. No, it's about building generators of more wealth so we can continue to spread that, because dualistic unity to me is like a fruit tree. We are all investing our energy into helping it grow so that way we can all eat the fruit at the end of it. Okay, that's the point. It's all it's meant to be, is something that perpetually creates for us, like a spring that just keeps bringing water. Okay, but if this works, if that is what it becomes, and it becomes this massive fucking tree or spring, and it's just continuously pushing, you watch me make more of them. Not necessarily the podcast, though. There are some people out there who want to create a podcast that I would love to encourage as community reflections of this. That would be great. But there are so many things that we can do in creating resources for ourselves, for our community. Fuck. I look at Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and all of their stupid ambitions, and I just keep thinking to myself, fuck, you have such a narrow mind. Like, you have such little imagination. Holy shit. Like, we could do so much that just perpetuates growth for everybody, and just do that. Do that long enough, and everybody's got enough. Changes our mindset. But somebody's got to do it first, which means somebody's got to stop worrying about profit. So here we are, not worrying about profit, even though I just ranted about it for like 20 minutes.
I think that's part of it too, because it's not even that we're like pushing it. We're talking about the process of it, because everyone goes through these things in their life at some point. And I, as Ray was saying, like, our focus is not on pitching this, selling it, because like I was talking about before with the attention pie chart. It's like our attention is on the conversation, on the community, on the things that we're doing, not the selling of the things that we're doing. And in a business, a lot of times it's like split 50-50. People are doing something and then they're, talking about what they're doing, or like trying to get more people, trying to sell more stuff, and pitching the thing that they're doing, as opposed to just doing the thing. And so our focus the entire time has been on doing the thing. And slowly, as it's gotten into, becoming a business and being registered and everything, like, we have to take a little bit to focus on like the building, behind the scenes of it. But for a good year, over a year, it was strictly conversation. There was like no thought whatsoever. It was 100% conversation. And so now it's like we're, begrudgingly kind of like opening up that attention a little bit, because it's like, all right, this is turning into something. We got to start doing that. But yeah, it's the attention is on the conversation. The attention is on the community. And so there isn't a massive chunk that's getting taken out. So we're actually able to continue to talk about the insights that we have. We have space for the insights to arise, because we're not so stressed and concerned for how things are going to work out. And so we'll chip in like some like, feel free to leave a review if you want. It's like, that's a thing. You can do that. But it's never going to be any even close to 1% of our focus. It's like here and there we'll toss it in, because the focus is the conversation. The focus is on expressing freedom. And beyond that, I'm just a fucking terrible salesman. Like, I've never had a sales job, never been a thing that I'm comfortable with doing at all. Like, I've gotten better about just being like, there's a lot here. I've actually had that recognition, not to like, pat ourselves on the back too much, but like, I come across talks that people do and other podcasts, other types of videos, and like, they'll go on a spiel for a while, and I'll just be like picking apart things like, careful there. Watch out for that. Yeah, not quite. And I'm like, Oh my God, there's so many people out here who have like big audiences that are spewing fucking bullshit. Things that actually don't help, things that actually not only don't help, but take you in the opposite direction of helpful things. So I'm sitting there like, and I'm like almost building a confidence within my like kind of anger of like, what the fuck is going on? Like, we're actually saying a lot of good shit here. And again, not patting ourselves on the back, but there's a conviction that I've I've been gaining, I guess, over the last, even just the last month or two with the conversation, because I'm like, damn, no one's really talking about it like this, and this is actually what's going on. And it's not even that we're believing in it, or like we're going on out on a whim and being like, I think this is it and we're just gonna ride with it. It's like this is like tried and true. There's a fucking massive base to these recognitions, because it's not something that we're, sticking our arm out and believing in and thinking like, all right, this is gonna sound good. It's like, let's have a fucking 4-hour conversation and see where we come to. Come at us with anything and we'll go back and forth and we'll come to these recognitions that we talk about. And so for me, as much as, because, never had to do sales growing up, like it was not a focus of mine. It does not come naturally at all, as people are probably aware of. And so, but through my confidence with just what we're talking about and the conviction that comes with it, it's getting easier to do those types of things, because it's like no one else is doing it. This is like fucking cream of the crop conversation, because we're not settling on anything. There isn't anything that we're giving you that you can even stand on. And that's what everyone else is doing. Everyone else is giving you something and being like, this is it right here. Just do this. And people are taking it and they're like, it's working for a little bit. And then they're like, yeah, it doesn't work anymore. Yeah, because it never was the thing, because it's not something you can settle upon. And that's what we're going to keep saying over and over and over. And for those willing to go through it, those willing to work on it in themselves, let go of that need for that fucking false certainty that everyone else is giving you. You're going to be able to experience a state of freedom that no one else is talking about. And so through that, it's gotten a little bit easier for me. But yeah, it doesn't come naturally, and I'll be the first to be willing to admit that.
Well, it's funny, actually. One of our community members, somebody who was at the first retreat, I was talking to them, I think, a month ago or so, and she was laughing at me because we had finally just talked about Patreon in one of our raw episodes, and I think it was at the end of the episode, and we're like, and there's this and this and this and this and this and this, and we were very excited to be sharing this with people. And most of the time up until then, we almost like hesitantly mentioned it, like we're just like, and if you want to, you can join us on Patreon, just because we'd really appreciate it, that kind of thing. But it always felt weird because we're asking people to pitch money in, and admittedly that's definitely not the point here. We definitely want to push money out, but at the moment, this is where we're at in the development of whatever this monstrosity is going to be. So she actually said, like, I was so proud of you guys the other day. I heard how you were representing the Patreon page and it sounded perfect. I could hear the conviction finally. And I thought to myself, that's it. That's how that should sound. And it was awesome. I was just like, that's kind of funny because I am a salesman. And I always butt up against, again, that altruistic part of me that doesn't want to sell you anything. I really don't. If I could do all of this for free, I would. Like, understand, if I could do all of this, if I could just walk around and talk to people and be on here and be here for everyone, I would do that because I want to. But the world doesn't work that way. And so we need to be able to sustain ourselves. But more importantly, there are so many things that we can get involved with. There are so many things that we can help. And so I never want to come across as a salesman. If anything, I want to come across as that nut who made it all work by not trying to make it all work, right? Like, that's really, like, if you're going to remember me for anything, don't worry about my name. just one day, and when you're in your 60s or 70s, go, man, I used to listen to Andrew Mernandez, this crazy asshole, and fuck, they did some great shit. And if I am referred to as some crazy asshole, you can even toss the word bald in there. That's just fine. Okay. I'm happy. Like, that's great. Like, if the best thing out of my life that you get is the fact that anything's possible, even if you're not thinking about yourself all the time, even if you're not just trying to satisfy yourself, even if you're putting everyone else first, that doesn't mean there's a limitation. I think that's it. That's all I'm embodying, is that you don't have to put yourself first. You really don't. You're going to be okay, because life supports that which supports life, and you are life.
Boom. But it's interesting. Ah, fuck, I just had something and then it went away. It's funny how that happens a lot, and not a lot, but like it definitely happens. And it's fun now because people have ideas of us. Inevitably, people create ideas of people, and they see people in certain ways and hear people talking and think they're very, articulate. And a lot of people ride that and they never push back on it. If they're seen a certain way, they're like, yeah, you know what? I am that way. I'm great, actually, and I'm a very good speaker and I articulate things very well. You're actually quite correct in that sentiment. And I
Lucky to be in my
love
presence.
yeah, fucking jackasses. But I love that we're at a point now, like people on social media will see me in a certain way and they'll think certain things. And I love my favorite thing to do is bash that idea, like push so hard against that. So now it's like, I don't know, there's even more freedom for me. And I think Ray's been doing this for a lot longer than I have, but realizing, because I don't think about myself that much, I forget that people do have an idea of me like all the time. I'm always doing that. I had someone, a friend of mine, she lives in LA, and I'm trying to figure out like some podcasts I want to be on in when I'm traveling around there. And so she had a friend who has one, and she was like, yeah, I'll connect you guys. And I said something like, great to meet you. Would love to keep in touch and figure out a time that works for us, like if you're interested. And my friend responds to me and she's like, Andrew, don't ever finish it by saying if you're interested, because you have like way more followers than her. Like she probably thinks of you as like, this is exciting for her to have you on her podcast. And you're saying if you're interested, and that's just me, like that's where I come from with things. Like I'm not making assumptions. I'm not like, you should be excited for me to be on your podcast. Like I have a very, very difficult time even realizing that someone might think that, which, works in certain cases, but it's also like, there is an aspect of me that's coming from existing with a lack of confidence in myself for a very long time. And so it's not like I'm coming from a place of like extreme confidence. And now it's like, and now I have over 1 million followers on platforms, and now I have even more confidence. It's like, it's bringing me up to like center with it. It's like finally catching up to like have some confidence instead of like skyrocketing it through the roof and being an egotistical asshole. So she was like, Andrew, don't ever finish a sentence with if you're interested. Like you have a lot of good shit to say. Like you're probably going to be one of the more interesting guests that she has on. Like you gotta come at it from like, she is probably very excited to have you. So finish it with excited to get something scheduled or something like that, because there's the conviction that comes with it. And it hit me and I was like, you're absolutely right. Like there was no pushback for me. I was like, I totally hear you. I come at things from that perspective a lot. And I think that, you're 100% right. And I will keep that in mind moving forward with things. But it's just funny because like people will see my accounts and stuff and have a certain idea that I don't have of myself. And so there's like an awareness with that I'm getting more used to. But then at the same time, through understanding that, it's like, all right, let's fuck this idea up a little bit. Let's bring things back to reality, that I'm a normal fucking person who does weird shit and dumb shit and fucks up and all the things that everyone else does, deals with tons of insecurities and still deals with anxiety, but just like manages it way better. And doesn't label it myself as it or anything, like obviously we talk about this stuff all the time, letting go of the idea, like all of those things that you've settled upon about you subside as well, or at least begin to. It doesn't mean that they don't pop up though. It's just not something you're settling upon. And so one of my favorite things, long story short, is pushing back against that idea and saying things that people are like, oh shit, I had an idea of you and now you're not really matching that. And it's like, boom, there's an insight for you. No one's ever the idea that you think they are. So yeah, chew on that one for a bit.
It's funny, somebody got that right in the face the other day. I was talking about them on the Instagram account, and it's so funny because they start off with like, they weren't polite by any means. They were very much like, oh, saying dinosaur bones don't prove that reality existed before me is very much, spiritual nonsense. You're putting people in danger in terms of mental health. I'm going to go and tell, I'm embarrassed that I ever told anybody about your podcast as a whole, that whole thing. And you see, what's really funny is that I always come across as the kind of person who's empathetic. Like I really do work at being empathetic because I don't think about myself much, but because of that, people will sometimes get the impression that I'm a pushover. And that is very much not the case. Like, I'm very much like a brick wall if you try and push me over. Right? It's pretty bad, like in general. And so I respond in kind to that kind of hostility. I'm just like, all right, well, you want to be a prick about it? I'm just going to tell you that you're being judgmental and derisive, and you're doing so because you're confused. And the fact is, the cognitive dissonance is driving you nuts because you don't understand what's being said. So rather than try and talk to me politely and ask a question or do your due diligence and go back and check the podcast episode, you're going to throw a little fucking tantrum here. That's what this is about. And so I'll just say that. And what I always find just hilarious is, after, even despite the intention they came into the conversation with, the tone that they were using, the lack of respect or anything like that, they'll all of a sudden go, well, I don't see why you gotta be like that about it. Like, I wasn't being offensive or disrespectful. I can't believe the response that I'm getting from you. This isn't what I expected at all. It's like, right, you expected me to be like, oh, go on, young grasshopper, say all the shit that you want to me. And I'm not going to fucking do that. So if you have this expectation of me, guess what's going to happen? It's going to get destroyed. Being peaceful does not mean I'm going to take your shit. But that's it. And so it's important to do that. By the time that the conversation ended, that person had blocked me. Once again, the mental gymnastics were just, they were just gorgeous. Like, it was so fun to watch. Like, by the end of it, like, I wasn't insulting your podcast as all. I wasn't saying you're all dangerous. I'm like, you literally said that you're worried for the people you referred to the podcast. Like, and then they just blocked me, because you can keep showing the obvious contradictions without ever getting mad about it. See what I mean? Like, if you don't attach to it, if you're just addressing it for what it is, you can be way more effective than if you let it piss you off. You stick to what is, you continue to stick to what is, including the motivations of that person through what they're showing you. That conversation will become very uncomfortable for that person. You don't have to let them get to you by any means, right? But you do have to recognize how much of their issue comes from them having an idea of you, an expectation of you, which is all based on what they want to see about themselves. And usually their problem with you is simply the fact that you're not playing along to the script that they never gave you.
Exactly. Yeah, it's funny because people in the spiritual realm will have, responses to comments just like wishing you love or something to a very derisive or aggressive comment. It's like, hope your day is going well. I love not doing that and coming back with an aggressive comment, especially if someone comes on a video. I even, a buddy who has a podcast, and he had another guy I know on the podcast. I saw a clip of it and someone commented like, dudes, because he was given his perspective on like where social media is going. And he's like, dude's just making stuff up and posting it on reels. And I responded with something like, I was kind of being a jackass, but I was like, dude's just commenting things, making up comments in the section because he has nothing better to do with his sad little life or something like that, with like a crying emoji. And like people probably see my stuff and they're like, seeing me talking my shit on my videos and stuff, and they don't think that you would do that. They think it would be like, oh, you gotta meet aggression with love and meet the darkness with light. It's like when you actually see things clearly, or more clearly, when you recognize that you're not what you think you are, beyond that, your reality, beyond that, you're fucking God and you're eternal and you've always been and always will be. There's no longer these fucking conceptual ways to respond to people, or it comes back to remaining in a state of empathy, but also being willing to use the entire fucking spectrum. You don't have to limit yourself to this little box because really it comes back to a faith in yourself. Like you think that if you go too far on one end of the spectrum, like you're not going to be able to come back from that, or they may see you in a certain way and you may not fit the idea of spiritual enlightenment that they have inside of their mind if you respond in a equally as aggressive way as they responded to you. When you drop that fear of getting caught on one side of the spectrum, or the fear of being perceived in a certain way, because it doesn't, it has to do with them, how they see things, how they need to see things. You can use the whole fucking spectrum. There's no longer a little way that you have to respond, and you have to respond in love and kindness. You can respond in whatever the fuck way you want, because there's nothing to fear. There's no judgment to fear from them. There's no opinion from them to fear. There's no fear of going too far in one end, of the pendulum, and fear of it not swinging back. Like, it's going to swing back. And so it can be fun to sometimes. And sometimes I will meet it with like, hey, clearly you're going through some stuff and hope you're having a good day. And even that will piss people off beyond just, if you just respond like, hope you have a great day. It's like, it's clear that you're struggling with something right now. I hope you, find the space to work through it or question it, and just, try not to settle upon anything. Like, that'll piss people right the fuck off, because they're like, I'm not going through anything. No, I'm not suffering at all. Like, okay, yeah, keep telling yourself that.
I think my favorite response is, that's adorable. Just because it's so funny how they'll come at you and they're just like, my points are important. My points are important. And it's very much like a toddler coming up to you and complaining about something just inane. Like you're just like, it's really not. Like, you're not nearly as complex as you'd like to believe you are. You're not nearly as insightful as you'd like to pretend you are. And you're certainly not coming from a place of authenticity. Like, that's all fucking obvious to anybody with eyes wide open. I just want you to know. But you're so convinced that you aren't this person because you couldn't possibly face the fact that you're an unpleasant prick, right? You can't take that shit in. So you just tell yourself a story that you're not, and then you pretend worse that you're not when you get called on being it. Oh, I can't possibly imagine why you're responding like this now. It's like, because of you, dickhead. That's pretty much it, and so, yeah. At the end of the day, it's important to be authentic. And I'm glad that I am seeing a lot more of that in your responses as a whole, because it really does come down to the fact it's the same with the podcast, the same with everything we've been saying about Patreon, about all that shit. Take me as I am, or don't fucking take me. I am not trying to tell you anything you want to hear. I'm just me. You're not being sold a product. Nobody's asking you to stay. If this is important to you, you want to share the conversation because you have a passion for growth, or you're tired of suffering, very much like me, stick around. Otherwise, you know where the door is, right? And that's it. And as long as you're living from there, that's life in a nutshell. And that goes back to dating and our relationships workshop that we had talked about in January, about being yourself, the need for authenticity, the requirement to accept that you are always alone, even in a relationship. And this goes to a question that we currently have in the comments section. I would love to know your thoughts on the still small voice when it comes to decision making. Do you have any experience with this? In particular, deciding whether to leave or stay in a relationship, especially when things are going well in the relationship, but you feel something is off. And so I just wanted to make sure I got the air quotes in there. So I've been in a relationship for 19 years. And in those 19 years, things have felt off here and there. And by off, I mean, I had expectations, or I was looking for something, or I was projecting something, or I was impatient, or I was getting the wrong idea of what the relationship was all about, or I was just not being myself. And so it became about the relationship, in which case now the other person's got to live up to my expectations. I have a certain idea about how they're supposed to act and treat me and so on and so forth. And that drives a wedge right between us. And so I would say that if you're going to focus on that, you may as well just leave the fucking relationship now, because you're going to kill it. Relationship is an ongoing exercise in empathy and compassion and understanding, the ability to get out of your own fucking way. It really is. Sometimes it's not about whether or not you feel off so much as whether or not you have the courage to communicate that, have a conversation, get down to brass tacks without worrying about them not liking you or leaving you, without trying to get anywhere, without thinking in some weird superficial fantasy that life is going to be so much better without this person around. Because I need you to understand, everybody's a person. Everybody is a person. Everybody is fucking complex. Everybody has shit to deal with. Okay. It's not that anybody has a certain twin flame, the one person that they're going to make it fucking work with. If you find somebody you can make it work with and make that person your one person, that's on you. Well done. Okay. Doesn't matter. It's not about the person. It's about your willingness to change and their willingness to change. A relationship takes work on yourself, most of all, which isn't to say that the relationship shouldn't end. If you're willing to change and let go of your expectations of them, you're giving them the space they need, you're giving them the compassion they need, you're giving them everything that they need to be themselves, and they still aren't in alignment with you or the relationship, they don't share your intention to keep it going, they don't share that same compassion for you, then yeah, okay, maybe it's over. But I'm telling you right now, as long as the problem is the other person, you're looking at the wrong problem. A relationship is built on responsibility. It really is. That's my advice.
Yeah, I was going back and forth in the comments yesterday with someone who was talking some bullshit about relationships, and they were basically saying how there's no way to have a healthy relationship without expecting the other person, to act in some way, shape, or form, because if you don't care about how the other person thinks about you, it's just an apathetic, the relationship is rooted in apathy, and, you can't actually have a good relationship without some desire for the other person to see you in a certain way, because then you just don't care, and then it isn't it. Like, humans need love. They need, partners and relationships and blah, 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 blah. I was like, first of all, just because you feel like you need them, and rather than questioning that need, you're going to say that humans all need that thing because it allows you to avoid the responsibility of understanding that you don't need anyone and you're responsible for you. Like, once you recognize that, things make a lot more sense. And it's just so fascinating how people actually think that they have to have expectations of other people, and they have to care about what other people think, or God forbid, the relationship isn't going to be fulfilling. But with a relationship, if you do care, and we talked about this a lot in our relationship, dating and relationship workshop, like, if you care about the way that they think about you, you are inevitably not going to be yourself. You're going to act in a way that you think is best get them to like you. And that's not being yourself. And so through that, it's going to build a resistance to the reality of what's going on. It's going to create this idea that, things feel off because you have a degree of expectations for them. And so in order to actually have a whole and fulfilling relationship, you have to be willing for them to leave, because it's almost like when you have a certain conversation or talk about certain things, we talked about how we've talked about a bunch, how faith is taking the step and not knowing where you're going to land, but knowing that you're going to land. And in a relationship, faith in yourself is taking that step. Maybe on the step that you're on, the person is with you, but not knowing is when you land, if they're going to still be with you, but knowing that you're going to land and it's going to be okay. And if you need them to be with you when you land on that step, question that. That's the thing that you have to let go of. That's where the feelings of off, the feelings of things not being, quite right is stemming from. Because if you need them to land there, you're not going to have the conversation. You're not going to take the step, and reality is going to keep flowing, and you're going to be on the step with them right here. Be like, things are starting to feel uncomfortable. It's like, yeah, because all of reality is pushing you to take that step and be willing to be alone in that next step. And if you're not willing to be alone, you're going to stagnate. You're going to get caught in a certain loop. You're going to be walking on eggshells. Because you're not willing to have the conversation, and therefore risk taking that step and being alone when you land. But that's the only way to keep things authentic, to keep things real and alive, or else it just stagnates and dies if you're not willing to crush those eggshells, not willing to crush your expectations of them, their expectations of you, because that's not what is the lifeblood of a solid relationship. It's not having those expectations. It's letting go of them and being willing to be alone, be free in yourself. And through that is how a healthy relationship is able to continue on.
Well said. I enjoyed the insight there. I want to follow up with the question that they asked as a follow-up. I was just worrying about our lack of common interests, passions, hobbies. Is love enough? And so again, I encourage you to look in the long term. Okay, so a problem with that idea of passions, interests, and hobbies is it sounds like you have a certain attachment to certain hobbies and passions and interests that are yours. Life is a very long thing. Fact is that if you're doing the same interests and hobbies and passions in 2 to 5 years time, you should probably start wondering why, because you're cutting yourself off from a lot of different experiences. And so from somebody who's been in a relationship for a long time, I will tell you, one, my wife doesn't share all of my hobbies and passions and interests by any means, and I don't expect her to. She's shown some interest here and there and realized that was as much as she wanted to explore, and then didn't explore it any further. And I really appreciated the fact that at least she gave it an open mind and the willingness to check it out. On the other hand, I've done the same with things that she's interested in, right? From time to time, pushing myself out of my comfort zone for me, not for her, for me. You see, I learned something from doing that. I learned something from going in a different direction that was against my preferences and comforts. See, I'm always looking for opportunities to expand myself, to let go of my attachments, to learn more and to unfold, or to let unfold more about what I am. So I throw myself in every situation I can, or every experience that I can. And so where's the resistance to exploring her hobbies coming from? Right? Because perhaps if you were less resistant to those, she would be less resistant to yours. Right? Because again, it's a relationship. It really is a result of both of you growing together. And if both of you are self-defining, you're not together. Keep that in mind. It really is. It's a wedge that will continue to drive you apart over time. Especially if it's early in the relationship, you have to deal with it every step of the way. You really do. If you want the relationship to grow and continue and last, you need to get out of the way. I can't offer that advice enough, truly. We are down to our last 7 minutes here. I just wanted to give a quick announcement that is the fact. We are going to be continuing on in a group chat, tier 1 today. So it's only $5 a month if you'd like to join us. It's for the next hour and a half. We chat about all kinds of stuff. No, it's a 2-hour day today. So this is going to be a great chat. You can join us, patreon.com/dualistic unity. We chat with our community members 5 days a week. On tier 1, you get to chat with us twice a week. If you want to join our free group chat on Wednesday, that's 3 times. Like there is plenty of opportunity to talk to us. You can be on the screen with us. You can turn your video off, just talk with audio. You can chat in the chat section. We do try to answer everybody's questions. Everybody gets to know one another. We have a huge community on Discord. You should definitely check that out. It's worth it. Can't tell you that enough. And that's all I'm going to say on it, because I know we talked bunch about it earlier, but I just want to say thank you to everybody who joined us here today. If you are interested in more about relationships and relationship building, we do have a workshop on it that came out in January. We cover it for 4 hours. There's a Q&A section there. We cover so much in that workshop. It's certainly worth your time.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the regarding the similar interests, like sometimes we'll get this idea that, oh, if we just have similar interests, then things will be great. Like having similar interests doesn't guarantee a great relationship. Like there's probably lots of people who have similar interests as you. And even I'll reference my last relationship. My ex-girlfriend and I had a lot of very similar interests, and it's not the thing that does it. Like just because you have that, just because you have, it seems like, on paper, things will work out great. It's like there's a lot of depth to people and to mentalities and things, and like hobbies and whatnot are a very, very, I don't know, surface level way to measure that. And it's like, just because you check the boxes doesn't mean it's going to work by any means. And so a lot of times people will get caught up in creating this idea of like, oh, if they were just like this, then things would be great. There's never that. That never exists. There's never oh, if they just, liked 3 of the same things I do instead of just one, like we'll be together forever and it'll work out. Like that's not the thing that does it. So through letting go of that idea that there's any, superficial sort of stuff that you can link each other through, there's more attention being paid to the experience that you're having. There's more growth and learning and willingness to let go of some of your own preferences through that and explore that in yourself for you. But there is no sort of superficial similar interest that's going to create the perfect relationship by any means. So I just wanted to add that on there. But yeah, super excited for the Patreon chat in 18 minutes. As Ray said, tier 1, so it's just $5, and they're always a ton of fun. If you have questions, we do our best to address things on Twitch. We don't always get to everything, but on Patreon, on the group chats, especially the 2-hour calls, we cover everything, anything anyone wants to talk about. Even if you have a topic that is in an episode and you're like, I want to hear your current take on this, like you can ask us anything. We'll go into literally anything. Basically, nothing is off limits on Patreon whatsoever. So yeah, super excited for that as always.
I wanted to add a quick follow-up regarding relationships. Very often when we get into relationships, because we're like, woo, I'm in a relationship, whatever our needs might be that motivated us there. If we're working off of need, that's really up to you and your awareness level and all that fun stuff. There is this tendency to kind of think, I should be in a pocket with this person. Like we should be connected at the hip where we're doing everything together and we love it and we're sharing our life. And I'm just telling you right now, okay, cherish the things that are just yours. Okay, because at some point that is going to be where you go to think about your relationship. You should have things that are just yours. It's not that you shouldn't be together. It's not that you shouldn't enjoy your time together. You should never be connected to this person to such a degree where you don't have the time to be by yourself or reflect. You should always remember it's your life and you should respect theirs in the same way. Give them space. Don't go everywhere they go. Leave them alone, okay? Because they're human beings just like you. Okay? You don't have to be connected at the hip for it to be a successful relationship. You don't need to do everything together to prove that you love one another. If you're still trying to prove you love one another, that is a problem you should address. That is my final thought on it. You don't need to live in a bubble with this person. It doesn't help anybody any more than it helps you to live in a bubble by yourself, right? It's the same lesson all the time, all the time. Be enough yourself. Enjoy your life. If they'd like to join you, let them do that. Don't demand they do that. If you'd like to join them, do that. Not because they demand it, but because rather it's important to you, for you. It's always the same stuff, but we're going to wrap this up here. Thank you, everyone, for joining us as we kind of went all over the map in this episode, talking about DU and our intentions and relationships and all kinds of fun stuff. Again, I want to give a quick reminder, if you can, support AJ. He would love to come to the Netherlands. We would love to see him there. You can find the link on our Discord or on our website under the events section in our navigation bar. It goes straight to his GoFundMe. We really appreciate it if you can. If you can't, don't worry at all. We just appreciate you being here and watching the show or listening to the show. So that's it for now. We will see you in 15 minutes on Patreon, and we appreciate it. Have a fantastic Monday.